and knew the pre-con request process, pre-conference request process, and also show you where you can get resources and information to answer any questions after the presentation is over. So I'm going to take you to the ATHE.org itself, but I want to show you the screen we're going to go to. So we'll begin by going to ATHE.org. We'll click on conferences. It gives information about the conference and where everything is located this year in Orlando, Florida. And then click on sessions. When I click on sessions, it takes me to the propose a session page. This page is where you can come back if you have questions, and I will circle back here at the end of the presentation. But if you click here, this will take you directly into the beginning of the session proposal process. If you click on visit the page to apply for a conference grant or a guest pass, it will take you to the form to apply for the conference grant or guest pass. And I also will show you where you can get back to this page during the session proposal. There's a page for frequently asked questions about the process, a page specifically for people who are interested in submitting a multidisciplinary panel, and finally a FAQ page for conference grant requests and guest pass requests. So right now what I'm going to do is start the session proposal process by clicking on this link. When I click on this link, it takes me to the introductory page, and this page just gives you information about the theme of the conference and particularly what kinds of questions and ideas the conference committee for Orlando is interested in. When I click on next, you'll see this at the bottom of your screen. It takes you to the next page in the session proposal process. Now these are the important tips that I was talking about, and I'm going to take you back to the PowerPoint presentation. These are the steps that we've already taken, and this finds us here. So this is the important thing. You want to remember to enter the information online directly into the form. We're asking you to not cut and paste from another document into the form. And the reasons for this is it wipes out your formatting and actually changes some of the characters. So if you can, which then creates a formatting issue when we're importing things into the brochure and the program book later, and it just heightens the possibility of error. Considering we're handling 300 to 400 proposals every conference. So if you can enter your information directly online, it's a relatively short form, that would be very helpful to us. We'll talk about what to do if you can't enter directly online in a later part of this presentation. Do not use all caps in the proposal if possible. Just if you're emphasizing something, make sure it's emphasized in the appropriate way. Again, that's another one of those formatting issues that gets erased in the import process. So you want to make sure that you're using the appropriate formatting. Also, do not use quotes unnecessarily. Particularly, you don't need to quote the title of the session because we remove all those quotes anyway, and it as we alphabetize session titles, it actually causes problems with the alphabetizing, excuse me, the alphabetizing process, and also again causes some weird formatting issues. When you're entering in a session title that includes the name of a play or an article or a book, we encourage you to quote, italicize it or quote it appropriately, because the staff, although we are all theater related people, may not know that what you're referring to is a book or a play. So when we're proofing all of the information for the brochure and the program book, we may miss that that's actually a play title or an article title that you're indicating in your session proposal. So moving on to the next slide, some other important tips to remember in relationship to the session process is you have a session coordinator for each session. That person is responsible for securing agreement from all participants before submitting the proposal. The same is true for multidisciplinary sessions, and I'll talk a little bit more about those later, but just know that all the groups that are participating in a multidisciplinary session should have agreed to participate before you submit your proposal. New this year, the focus group debut panel proposals. We need the names of the winners no later than May 1st to make sure that all the winners of the debut winners are included in the program book. Another thing that I want to remind people of is if you're a committee chair, you need to submit a proposal for your committee business meeting. If you're a focus group conference planner, we need a proposal for the focus group membership meeting and conference meeting by November 1st. And any other meetings, offsite forums, or dinners, all those need to be submitted and scheduled. For instance, if you're doing a meet and greet for your focus group and you want that listed in the program book, you actually need to submit a session proposal to us. And moving on to the next slide, and then I'm going to go back to the actual online form. But what you're looking at right now is the beginning of the session proposal form. Are there any, I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions on that information before I dig down into the form. So if you have questions, please enter them into the question box and either Sean, Nancy, or myself will respond to your questions.
Hi, Joan. We have one question. Quotes or please repeat whether quotes or italics are acceptable for play titles.
Sean, you said that the italics won't work. Is that
Italics
true?
will not come through on the form.
Then I would quote them, and hopefully it won't cause the formatting error when we download them from the database. I'm not sure unless you have a suggestion for a better way for them to do that.
No, that's the suggestion that I would offer. We have
Okay.
another question from Matthew. Is this PowerPoint available for post-webinar review? Yes, Matthew, we're going to put both the recording of this session and the PowerPoint online on our website, and we'll send out an email to the membership as soon as we've done that. Are there any other questions right now? Okay, in that case, we're going to move forward.
Great. So here we are on the page of the session proposal that reminds you of the information that I just shared with you. So if you go to the bottom and click next, so hopefully something will happen. So it takes us to the first page of the session proposal. And here you'll see that this is where you would select whether you're a single focus group, whether you're doing a committee proposal, or a multidisciplinary proposal. So if you're proposing a single focus group session, you would go down to number 2 right here and choose which focus group you're proposing the session for. If you're doing a committee proposal, you would scroll down to number 3, and here you will see that all the committees are listed and select the appropriate committee that you are proposing the meeting for. If you're choosing a multidisciplinary focus, you would scroll further down to number 4, and what you'll see here is it lists all the focus groups plus the committees. And the reason for this is that for a multidisciplinary proposal, you must have a minimum of 3 people working on that or presenting in that session, but it can be any combination. It can be 3 focus groups or 2 focus groups in one committee, 2 committees in a focus group. So how you slice and dice which 3 you choose to be a part of the multidisciplinary session, you can select them from here. At this time, you can, if you submit a session proposal with less than 3 participating um, groups, that proposal is considered secondary to the ones that have been submitted with 3 groups as part of the multidisciplinary session. And when we look at the multidisciplinary frequently asked questions, that would be the time to ask questions about how that works. It doesn't mean that the session won't get approved. It just means it will probably come in at a lower priority for approval over the ones that have 3 participating committees. So if I was going to go back up here, I'm going to select a committee proposal. I'm going to scroll down to number 3. I'm going to select the conference committee, since that's one that I'm most familiar with. And then I go further down. Hopefully you can follow me on my screen. And it asks me what my session format is. And these are fairly consistent from year to year. Is it a panel with papers? Is it a panel where you're doing a presentation and then having a discussion? Are you doing some sort of performance or demonstration, poster session, workshop, or membership or committee meeting? If there's something else like an off-site or a meet and greet or a reception, you would enter it in down here in other. Then it asks what type of room you would like, and in each of the rooms for the focus group, and this is particularly for the membership meetings and committee meetings, whether you want a flip chart or whether you need some other kind of setup to conduct your meeting, you would list it here. I'm going to click on next. And here's where you're going to give us your title. Now, here it's really important here to make sure that your title is 15 words or less, that you make sure that it's the title that you want, because it will go in the marketing brochure. You will have time to submit changes to the title by May 1st, but the marketing brochure goes out much earlier, so we'll be taking that title directly from what you enter into your session proposal form. So I encourage you in each step of the way to proofread what you've typed in. As we mentioned before, we prefer you enter information directly into this form, but if you do need to cut and paste, you'll see, if you can see my cursor right here, that it gives you information on how to cut and paste into this form in a way that it will accept the information that you're putting in. If you scroll down, there's a session description. You'll see that it's a 25-word description. This is what actually goes in the program book. The title, the session description, and the list of the session coordinator, chair, presenters, all of those end up in the program book. It is a 25-word max. If we receive in the end descriptions over 25 words, we'll edit them or send them back to you and ask you to edit them. The session abstract is where you make your case to the people who are vetting all of the proposals, and that is a 250-word max as well. And you'll see there's a description here: describe goals and objectives, give your short synopsis, and explain how these address the conference theme. I'm going to click on next. And here's where we get into the audio visual. You'll see that you can select one audio visual aid from this list at no cost. So one is free. If you choose a flip chart, that's great. It'll be free. If you choose a flip chart and a CD player, you'll be charged $50. So just know that you get only one of these selections free. If you need additional audio visual, you'll see here that you have the option of choosing additional audio visual, including this LCD package for display, the audio for the LCD, DVD player and monitor, and an internet connection. Things I'd like to highlight here before I take you down into the conference grant form to to apply for a grant is that if you are expecting to just show a PowerPoint presentation, then you would choose the LCD package. If you're expecting to show a PowerPoint presentation and then go to a YouTube video that has text, or to show a short clip from a movie, you're going to want to also purchase audio. So that would be the LCD package and audio. If you're just going to show a movie separately and speak to it, or some kind of DVD, you're going to get your DVD player and monitor. And finally, if you need any kind of internet connection, including going out to the internet to get YouTube, you're going to need to purchase the internet connection, because they don't come in the hotel conference rooms. So as you're thinking through your presentation, especially in this age where we're getting more and more facile with technology, really think through what you're going to need. This includes, we don't encourage you Skyping in presenters, but if you think that something like that is going to need to happen for your presentation, you're going to need an internet connection to do that. So again, as you're thinking through your presentation and with your presenters, I encourage you to talk to all of them about what they think they're going to do as part of their presentation process. Additionally, know that all of these are PC related. So if you're expecting to hook something up to the Mac, you're going to need to bring your own Mac adapter. We've been fortunate last year that our audiovisual person had a Mac adapter, but that's not always a guarantee. And it's safer for you to have all of the things that you need to make your presentation go than to rely on the hotel or the audiovisual vendor. They do their best, and we do our best preparing them and working with them, but it is in the end your presentation. So what I'd like to show, and you can see that if you're planning on showing a YouTube clip and a PowerPoint and having audio, that what you're going to be looking at is a $650 AV package. Now you can apply for a grant, and you'll see here that you can click, and this will take you into your conference grant. The information here is very important, so I do want to highlight it and go over it. Grants and guest passes for audio are awarded at the same time the sessions are selected. So once we've gone through, all the sessions have been vetted and we've scheduled them, then we will award guest passes and grants for audiovisual requests. Any audiovisual request that comes in last minute, which for us, even though the conference isn't until August, is after May 1st, are subject to a $50 late fee, as well as the cost of any audiovisual that you are requesting, and we may not be able to approve it at that time. We've been pretty good the past few years in being able to help people with their requests, but it's not a guarantee. So again, as you're thinking through your proposal, really think about what you're doing for your audiovisual and what needs you're going to have. You'll see here that it says you may apply for only one session guest pass and one all conference pass using this form. If you need to apply for multiple session passes, you need to fill out more than one form. And I'll stop at the end of this little section and make sure that we have questions, and I'm sure there's going to be questions around this. But if you're applying for AV and a guest pass for your same session, you're going to need to fill out this form twice. And you can get to it here or where we were at the beginning, and I'll show you again at the beginning of the session proposal process. Why don't actually, before we move forward, why don't we stop here and see if there are any questions about this process that either Sean or myself or Nancy can answer.
Hi there, Joan. We have a
Hi.
couple of questions so far that I've
Okay.
provided answers to via the chat window. for each of the people that asked. Sabrina Noto Francisco asked, what is the difference between a focus group and a committee? And I
Oh, great.
explained that a focus group is a group of ATHE members who are interested in a particular field of study, or a particular, usually field of study like Latino, Latina, that sort of thing. And a committee, the committees are standing committees of the organization, each led by a vice president or executive board member, such as the treasurer leads the finance committee. And then Catherine Young asked, can you have more than 3 focus groups for a multidisciplinary session? And does this affect the priority? And I said to Catherine that you can have more than 3 focus groups or committees for a multidisciplinary section, but that having more than 3 does not affect the multidisciplinary session review process that we go through with all of the multidisciplinary sessions.
Great.
Are
Are
there
there
other
other?
questions?
Sean, this is Nancy Erickson. Let me just reply to what you were just talking about in terms of
Sure.
more than 3 groups to sponsor multidisciplinary. Um, each of those groups is requested to rank any multidisciplinary group that they're a sponsor of. So if we have 4, it's unlikely that the 4th group will get to do any ranking for that session. We'll bring this up in the conference committee, but that's my opinion at this time.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Nancy, could I ask you to reply to just to clarify something that I said and make sure that I didn't confuse anybody, which is that if I am proposing a session and I need a guest pass for that session and an AV grant, that I need to fill out two requests, grant requests for that session.
If those are not both on the grant form, then yes, but I thought that both of those were originally on the grant form, the AV
They
and
are.
the session. So yes, if you're applying for, I think it seems, according to Sean, that the issue comes around when you have more than one guest pass that you're requesting. Is that correct, Sean?
That is correct.
So on the
Okay.
same form, you can request a guest pass and you can request the audio visual.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And I will also clarify that by showing you, I don't, are we still showing my screen, Sean?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions before I go to the bottom half of this grant form?
We have a question from Bethany Wood, which is what constitutes a participating committee? Any of the committees that are, if you needed to have a committee involved in a multidisciplinary session or you have an idea for a session, you can reach out to any committee that's listed on the ATHE website. They all participate in the conference.
Right. So, for instance, if you wanted to do a session on multimedia and scene design, you could have the design and technology focus group, the acting focus group, and the electronic. Oh, I'm sorry. What is the ETC committee?
Electronic Technology Committee.
Electronic Technology Committee. So that's an example of how you would have a committee as part of a session proposal.
Nancy, I think here's a question from Martha Johnson for you. And that's what factors are taken into consideration in choosing who receives AV grants? What kinds of things should we include in goals and objectives of grant?
We usually, I would say if something about that session is absolutely necessary to have the technology, then I would put that in there under the goals and objectives of the grant. To answer your question about how the decisions are made about AV or tech grants, we try to fund as many of those as possible. So, because the way we schedule the rooms, which is more information than you want to know probably, is that we stack all the sessions that need an LCD in the same room. So, in that way, we're able to give multiple OKs for that request as long as we can put them in the same room during one day. So, I hope that helps.
And here's another question from Bethany Wood. What should you do if you have 2 sponsoring focus groups? Is that considered multidisciplinary? And I'll leave that
Nancy,
to either you or Nancy to answer, Joan.
You need three.
You really do need three. It's the minimum for the first review.
So, Bethany, the answer to your question is no, it really wouldn't be considered multidisciplinary. Um, you might need to go and seek out another focus group, but you can always just submit it as a single focus group sponsored proposal. Are there any other questions at this time? Any other questions? Okay, Joan, back to you.
Great. Well, before you take yourself off, Sean, I want to go through the rest of this grant request form and just point out a few things. And there's a question that I'd like you to answer, Sean, if you can.
Okay.
So you want to make sure you have your session title, the name of the session coordinator, and the email address. This is very important because if we have any questions or concerns about the grant proposal process, we need to get back to somebody who's going to be responsible and responsive. So make sure that you have the appropriate email address for the contact person for this grant on here. If it's a focus group or a committee, having the name of the focus group or committee that's requesting the grant is important. When we get down to the budget, Sean, I wanted you to speak to not inserting whole numbers and why that is important.
The reason why you have to insert whole numbers is because the form is set up so that it will not accept decimal points. Don't use dollar signs. If you have lodging and you wanna apply for a grant for $200 for a night at the hotel, I think it's probably less than that. Um, Nancy, how much is a night at the hotel?
139 single double.
So if you wanted to apply, for instance, for a night of lodging for your guests, you would put in 139 or 140. So you want to round up or down, use whole numbers. The form will reject if you don't use whole numbers.
And also notice that the total grant request cannot exceed $500 per session. And Nancy, that includes if you're asking for an AV grant and a guest pass for the same
Correct.
session.
That's correct.
Thank you. So I'm going to switch us back over to the PowerPoint briefly because what I'd like to do is we just went over the budget section, sorry. I would like to highlight some things about the pass grant request. So guest passes are only awarded to presenters who are not involved in full-time teaching in higher education. And there are two types of passes, guest passes that we give. One is a session pass, which is a $50 value per person, and that's the admission to your session only. So it doesn't give them access to the full day of the conference or the full 3 days of the conference. It's just for them to come in, present at their session, and leave. And that you'll find here on the guest pass grant request. You'll fill in the name of the speaker, their company or affiliation if they're with a theater company, their email address and contact information. And then the next guest pass that you can request is an all conference guest pass. And that all conference guest pass is for the entire conference registration. It's requested only for those presenting multiple sessions. If you're bringing someone in to do a workshop and do a presentation and a performance, perhaps as you would request an all conference guest pass. And you can see at the bottom, these are usually, not always, but usually reserved for plenary speakers, paid workshop leaders, the keynote speaker, awards recipients, performers, people like that. If you have questions about that, your best bet is to contact Nancy because she can tell you whether it's appropriate for you to request an all conference guest pass for this particular person before you do it. But this list is pretty inclusive. So I'm going to take us back to our form, and all of the information I just went over is here: guest pass, all conference guest pass. And again, Sean, if they're applying for a guest pass for more than one session, that's when they need to fill out this form more than once. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. So now that and then at the bottom, this is the key, make sure you click submit. And then it will tell you that you've applied for a conference grant, and that you should print this page confirming that you have submitted and applied for a grant. So I'm going to take us back into
And
the
then they
session.
have to, excuse me, they have to push submit again, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. And then you have to hit submit a second time. And that is true for the session proposal. Thank you for reminding me, Nancy, although it is on our form later. So even if I had forgotten it, everybody on the call would see that. But I'm glad that we got reminded of it. I'm going to catch us back up to where we were when I left off. So we were here at AV, which is apply and how to apply for a grant. So choose your AV. Prepayment. So if you're paying for an AV session, we need that payment by May 1st. And there's information here for where to send that payment. Also notice that there will be no additions to the AV after June 1st. So you want to adhere to those guidelines and deadlines for your AV proposals. We went over the grant request form. So the AV and the grant request form are the same. And you need to apply for a grant with your proposal by November 1st. And then we get into the more details of what the room is like. Can it be noisy or movement? So if you're doing a session where people are on their feet working with their voice, we want to know so that we make sure you have appropriate space for the room, and that also we're located in an area where it's not going to disturb other sessions and or other hotel meetings. And you can choose both noisy and movement. It doesn't have to be either or, so you can choose both. You'll select room setup, how you would like the room set up. And the conference rooms are pretty standard. They come with chairs and tables, and they can be arranged in a couple of different ways. And so the open with chairs on perimeter and theater style are fairly traditional. If you have some other way you'd like to have them set up, you would enter it here in the other section. Then you click next. This takes you to the page where you're going to fill out all of the information we need for the session. This includes who's the session coordinator. This is the person that we will go back and contact if we have any questions about the session proposal. So again, you want to make sure that their email address and their phone number is current and correct so that we know how to contact them. You'll also notice that for those of you who have submitted proposals before, we have a new request this year, and this has to do with the way the program book is being set up. So we're asking you to fill out your name for the program book, how you would like it to be printed. So that would be your first name and your last name. And then we do the same thing in the speaker's index, but what we ask is for you to clarify last name, first name. And this, we import all of this information directly from the database into a spreadsheet and then into a Word document. So this just helps us resolve any formatting or editing issues. And this is, again, this is new. So if you have a question about that, I'll make sure that we pause. But I think it should be fairly straightforward. It's just one extra step. Your affiliation, your email address, all of this information should be correct for session coordinator. If the session coordinator is delivering a paper, if you have a session chair who's different from the session coordinator, you would put their name here. And actually, if the session coordinator and chair are the same, you want to re-enter this information so that we know that they're the same person. And then you have your participants. And the participants you can list on this form up to 10. Sean, what do they do? We've only had one exception to this, but what do we do if we have more than 10 participants for some reason?
They need to enter the first 10 and then contact you directly.
Great. So at the end of this presentation, you will also get my email. And if you're going to add an additional person beyond 10, which would be quite a robust session, you would need to email me and let me know that you have additional people. So for each of these, we have the session title, and the key here again is that this session title, your name, your affiliation will all be printed in the program book as you have entered it in this form. So please, again, at each stage of this process, proofread. And here's where I will also tell you that there's not a place at the end of the session proposal to print out your entire session proposal. So what if you want a record of everything that you've entered into this, you need to print each screen as you complete it. And Sean, you can verify that for me. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Great. So the final thing, once you have all of your information entered, is to click Submit. It will tell you here that you've submitted your proposal. You will receive a second confirmation, but everybody will be doing that on a weekly basis. So you might submit your proposal on Monday, but you won't get a secondary confirmation from ATHE until Friday. So give it a week to make before you contact us and say, did my proposal get submitted? And also check your spam folders because it will be an automated response from ATHE. And then finally, to finally submit it, you would need to hit submit a second time. So you'll know when it says thank you for taking the survey that you have done everything that you need to do. I'd like to stop here and answer any questions before I take us back to the FAQs and the information on the pre-conferences. Are there any questions?
We've had a few more questions.
Really?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Matthew asked, or Matthew and Martha both asked a similar question, which is if you're seeking sponsorship from a single focus group, do you need permission from them before submitting the proposal? That is not necessary. Generally, you can submit that and your focus group conference planner will receive it. You may want to, just as a courtesy to them, just say, hey, how are you? I'm submitting a proposal, just letting you know. Generally, no, though, you do not have to seek their agreement or their sponsorship or for their sponsorship in the same way that in the same way that you would do for a multidisciplinary. And Martha Johnson also asked, let me see here. What does it mean that the session coordinator must, quote, register for the conference prior to submitting proposal? And Joan, if you can just go back here to the second page of the thing.
Of the session proposal?
Yeah, of that form. Go ahead
Great.
next. Scroll back up. Oh, wait a minute. Go back to the previous page.
Hold on.
Okay. So this is it. This is in reference to this top line right here. Session coordinator is responsible from securing agreement from all participants to participate and register for the conference prior to submitting a proposal. The way we can rewrite that for next year is prior to submitting a proposal, session coordinator is responsible for securing agreement from all participants to participate and register for the conference. Basically, everyone has to be registered for the conference in order to present at the conference, is what that means. No, session coordinators do not have to register, in other words, before submitting a proposal. Martha Johnson also has another question, and
Oh,
does
Sean, before you move on, can I just highlight for everyone on the call that this is really important, especially if it's somebody who's not in the field, that they need to be registered for the conference in order to present. If for some reason you think that this person who's on your session uh, is not interested in the conference and is just coming for the session to give their paper and then they're leaving, that's the kind of person you would request a session guest pass for. Otherwise, they'll be required to pay a 1 day registration fee, which is about $165 in order to present. Everybody at the conference presenting either needs to have a guest pass or they're registered for the conference in order to present. I
uh,
just want to clarify that.
okay, and we have another question, also from Martha, and she wants some clarification about what affiliation means. And affiliation is your university. That's what's printed in the program book. Departments are not included, so just your university for affiliation.
Or it could
James,
also be a company. Excuse me,
Right.
this is
right,
Nancy.
or a company, right. James L. Sharma has two questions. The first is, are co-authored papers permissible? If they are, is it okay if only one of the authors is able to attend the conference and present the paper? I don't think that we have any rule as to whether or not co-authored papers are permissible or not. So I would say that yes, and if only one of the authors is able to attend the conference and present, I would say that that would also not be something that we would get involved in. That would have to be between you and the focus group conference planner, and the conference planner. You would go through the same process. Is that right, Nancy?
That's correct.
Okay. Two, is any funding available for foreign panel participants beyond the guest pass? And would a foreign participant be eligible for a guest pass if he teaches at a secondary institution outside of the U.S.? Nancy,
The
I'll go
answer,
ahead and let you have that one.
sure, I would say yes to both those questions if I recall them correctly. So you can apply for, in this case, I would go ahead and apply for an all conference guest pass if you're wanting to bring someone in from a country outside of the North America. And then you could also request travel as long as, again, that total amount doesn't exceed $500.
Okay, are there other questions? Any other questions at this time? Okay. Oh, here we go. Martha Johnson, how flexible are the session formats? For example, can participants include some performance in a quote panel with papers? Again, on that question, the answer would be all we see is what you give us on the thing. So if it's not going to be all performance and it will be a paper, it'll be some mix. I would just indicate that somewhere in my session description. I wouldn't or my session abstract. Which is the shorter one, Joan? Abstract or description? Joan?
The description is the shorter one.
Okay. So I would include that in my session abstract that there will be some mix
Yes.
of performance and
Uh,
participants.
Hello.
Joan, we can hear you. Are there other questions?
Okay, great. I said yes. The description is that. Are
Now we can hear you, Joan.
we done? Are we good?
Yes, Joan, we can hear you.
John, it seems like her audio is cutting out.
Yes. Can a panel be submitted with as few as three participants or papers? That from James L. Shama. Yes, James, that's perfectly fine. As few as three is fine.
Let me add something to that. For those people who might be new to this whole process, single papers are not going to be accepted. What will happen is those will just not be included at all in the consideration or the vetting. So just so you know, do not submit a single paper. If you are the only person that you know of with a single paper, then I would contact the focus group that you would most likely submit it with and ask for their help and give them an idea about what your topic is.
Okay, do we have more questions? Joan, are you there? I think Joan's audio is cut out a little bit.
Okay, Sean, do you want to keep going then?
Uh huh. Are there any other questions? Okay, so let's go through. I believe that Joan was going to, for those of you who are interested, I believe that Joan was going through the.
I'm back.
You're back?
I'm,
Okay.
I'm back. Thank you. Sorry
Welcome back.
for that.
We're done with
Sean,
questions, Joan.
have
So
we concluded with questions? Can
we
we?
have.
Great. So I'd like. Great. So we're right at the end of the session. So
There seems to be a problem with your mic.
this is new. Is that we have. There's a problem. Can you not hear me?
Right, it keeps cutting out.
Okay. I am on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Great. So we're right at the end of our session, and I'd just like to point out for people who are thinking of sponsoring a pre-conference that this year we have a reservation request form. And if you go to your conference session screen, you'll find it at the bottom. And you can access the form by clicking on this link. And you can also download this information about why we're having a pre-conference form, what you need to do to apply for it, and any information you need regarding the pre-conference form by clicking here. There's a PDF that it will take you to. It will take you to this page, and then there's a PDF at the bottom that says pre-conference grants, and that will give you all of the information on how to apply for a pre-conference and what you need to do that. And those are focus group related, usually a meeting that happens before the first day of the conference. For a women in theater program or the acting program, they'll do a gathering before the conference begins. And there are grants available for that, and all the information is listed here. So I'd like to take us to the end of our presentation by just highlighting a few things. Again, when you're entering in information into the session proposal, don't use unnecessary quotes. Try not to cut and paste if possible. Do not use unnecessarily caps. Debut panel names must be submitted by May 1st. Again, if you're applying for a pre-conference grant, you want to make sure that that is submitted to Chase Brindgardner, who's our conference vice president. And again, all of that information can be found on the pre-conference information document. Are there any other questions before we end? Hello?
There are no questions. Anybody else? Oh, let's see here. Prior to submitting a session proposal, is there a clearinghouse for identifying potential session presenters? And I'll take this one, Joan. Yes, you can put out calls for papers or presenters or really anything on our listserv. That's athecast at athe.org. If you think that you're a member, or if you attempt to submit an email and you get a rejection notice, let me know and I can be sure to add you. You can just shoot me an email, and my email address is really simple at comm@athe.org.
And I have that listed on our on these next few pages where I for resources. So this again, this presentation will be up on the website soon. So I just wanted to draw your attention to the resources, the session proposal FAQs. If you go to conference session, it'll take you to this page. The information on multidisciplinary, information on session proposal process, conference grant, and guest passes. And at the bottom, take information taking you to the pre-conference form and information about how to apply for a pre-conference. And then last but not least, how to contact us if questions occur to you after this presentation. Certainly you can contact me at sessions@athe.org or Sean at comm@athe.org. And if you have very particular questions about the grant requests, you can apply. You can contact Nancy Erickson at her email at nancyerickson@aol.com. Um, so I'd like to conclude. Thank you so much. If there's any final questions that you would like to ask before we close out, Sean and I are available, and Nancy are available to answer them.
I have a question from Martha Johnson, which you just answered, which is whom do we contact with further questions? And then I had another one from Amanda Boyle. Are we able to get a copy of this PowerPoint? And the answer to that, Amanda, is yes. We're going to upload this PowerPoint as well as a recording of this webinar on our website. And that website, it'll be on the conferences page, this or probably the conferences/sessions page. Joan, can you show them that?
Yes.
And it'll be on this page that Joan is getting ready to show you. Conferences, then scroll over conferences, and then click on sessions, and you can access the PowerPoint or the video there. Okay, finally, are there any other questions? Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. And I apologize for the audio difficulty, but I do appreciate all of you taking time out of your day. This will help us move through the session proposal process more efficiently. And again, please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any further questions after this is concluded. I look forward to seeing all of you in Orlando.
Thank you, Joan and Sean.
Thank you.